Chapter 6, Discovering Atlantic. Jerub, Malka, Balkan, and Trioa walked towards the door of the committee chambers. Before the door opened, they stopped. Their joy in having guided their society to safety and a new home was at a fevered pitch. They laughed and danced in happiness. Anyone watching them would have wondered if these were the same brave and wise men who led them all to this safe harbor. The men slowly regained their composure and walked out to greet the community with wide beaming smiles and tears of joy flowing from their bright eyes. The community reciprocated by greeting them with warm and appreciative embraces and handshakes. Sonny's father noticed his daughter and Qualdor in the crowd. He and the other members made their way towards the young couple to congratulate them. Qualdor and Sonny saw the men coming in their direction and walked to meet them. Jerub looked at his daughter with love as he held her shoulders firmly and brought her towards him in an embrace. This is the exchange Jerub had planned to have with his daughter after entrusting her to Qualdor for the rest of her life. After walking back down the aisle on Qualdor's arm, Jerub would congratulate his daughter and at the same time hug her so close she would know he'd always be there for her. Now that Jerub felt he finally accomplished this simple but meaningful gesture, he knew he would now be able to direct a course to Atlantic. This moment and this place were one of new beginnings, where his only daughter and the man she loves would start a happy life. After resting in her father's embrace for this brief moment, Sonny looked at him with affection and gratitude. They both said so much without uttering a word. Although she was an only child, Sonny was not an attention seeker. Even on a day when it would have been justified, she still didn't demand anything for herself. Even though her wedding day was a disaster, she found the resiliency to work alongside everyone for the good of them all. Jerub couldn't help but embrace his daughter one last time. Faltor left the system's room to speak and congratulate his people. Through the crowd, he noticed his son looking lovingly at the affectionate display between Jerub and his daughter. He walked over to his son and put his arm around his shoulder. Qualdor looked lovingly at his father before they warmly embraced each other. Jerub and his daughter parted from their hug as soon as Faltor and his son separated from their embrace. The overwhelming environment of joy caused the four to wrap their arms around each other and squeeze each other tightly in display of their ecstatic happiness. Their shared embrace expressed all of their emotions and feelings for having overcome so much hardship and yet still be full of so much life, inspiration, and hope for the future. Jerub raised his head and noticed Balkan, Trioa, and Malka making their way towards the system center. He thought perhaps they could be searching for him in Faltor. He brought this to Faltor's attention, who nodded in agreement. Jerub, with his arm around his daughter's shoulders, walked with her towards the system center along with Faltor and Qualdor following closely behind. They entered the room to find Una and Jerub's wife already there conversing with Malka, Balkan, and Trioa. Evidently, the wives also went to greet their husbands and children at the center. A startling new sound took everyone's gaze away from the kissing couples and into the viewing screens. They stared at the remarkable dolphins at play, welcoming them to this new home. Balkan, one of the eldest members of the inner group, began to recall what his great-grandfather explained to him many years ago. He remembered the experiences and events his grandfather had passed on from his grandfather and felt inspired at this very moment to share these thoughts with everyone in the room. He started, "Congratulations. Many years ago, my grandfather shared with me the stories that his grandfather passed on to him. He spoke of joyful animals in the world that his grandfather left behind. Animals that represented peace in the waters, and they fit the sound and description of these very creatures we are seeing now. They call them dolphins. Through the stillness, he continued. His grandfather explained to him how he came into close association and playful contact with these dolphins. It was some time before his grandfather's birth that scientists and environmental experts gave serious warnings of the planet's warming. They called it global warming. They said that the ozone layer, the protective layer around the globe keeping harmful rays from passing through, was being depleted, allowing the harmful rays through. They were warned that people could change and alter the effects on the ozone layer by reducing or completely eliminating the use of harmful products that pose a threat to their future and the future of their children. Some groups took the warning seriously, but in large part, most people did not. They continued on as if there was no danger to their planet. By the time my great-grandfather was an adult, the danger was in full bloom. The areas of the planet called the polar ice caps began melting. These were Arctic areas where only creatures who could survive the frigid temperatures inhabited. The melting of the ice caused huge amounts of water to invade the land where people lived. My great-grandfather, along with some scientists, environmentalists, engineers, and others, calculated that soon all of the planet's land masses would be lost underwater. So they made plans to begin building underwater. Along with these plans, they developed ideas of how to sustain a community of people beneath the seas forever. They calculated what went wrong with their own society and were determined to inculcate in themselves and their offspring the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that were needed so that this impending disaster would never be repeated again. When the construction of this great underwater city was completed, my great-grandfather began playing with and studying these creatures known as dolphins. Then, without a moment's notice, all the polar ice caps unleashed their imposing water force on the planet. Many drowned in the widespread deluge except those who knew of the underwater village. My grandfather explained how his grandfather spoke about a place he lived in called Atlantic. It was in this area called Atlantic that the survivors went to live and begin again. They called their home the globe because it was like their planet, their home that was destroyed by water. When the elderly man ceased from speaking, the entire system center was gripped with silence. With their heads held down in deep thought, those listening to Balkan realized how, like their ancestors, they too had escaped disaster with their lives and were now starting a new civilization again at Atlantic, with hopes of their future generations' survival. If only Balkan was at home in a globe once again and had with him the historical annals, he would have been better equipped to explain to the younger people that Atlantic was not an area, but a body of water called the Atlantic Ocean. So then, we are in a place of peace, a place where our ancestors first learned of these magnificent, peaceful creatures. We are in this place where we can trust again. We can start again. This place called Atlantic, Trioa said. The other elderly members' comments added to the comfort and warmth of the moment. But the statements also gave pause to a feeling of seriousness. The beaming smiles from all in the systems room were now replaced with serious expressions. They remembered the places, threats, and attacks that led them back to Atlantic. But by making it through the vortex, which seemed to be an insurmountable and impossible task before them, they conquered everything in their path to get to this place, which had always been home. The dolphins once again broke the deafening silence of deep concentration with their joyful clamor. That means that we are the 6th generation that has been living in the globe below the sea, Sonny calculated. You are absolutely right, agreed Trioa.